Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Monday's Wealth Creation Show. In the sun, Jim, we've got the sun here as well, but probably not as nice as yours.
That's all right. You can see it's a bit windy, as you see over there. Flatten my boot a bit. You need the wind here just to keep the temperature down because it's absolutely boiling. So I've actually had to turn away from the sun because it would be intense on my face. So I will look a bit darker here, but it's no anything to do with anything other than the white balance in the camera.
Yeah, I notice you've got a subtitle there under your name today.
Property Time Lord. Self-claimed, self-professed Property Time Lord. It's like, well, that's what it is effectively. The only thing I really did this for was to get my time back and to use my time for whatever I wanted to use it to. Never need to worry about money ever again. And you noticed the day I posted that one, I'm finally on the beach drinking pina coladas.
I laughed so much at that.
I just thought, when I saw it in the menu, I thought, oh, I'm going to have to order that.
No, it was a virgin one though.
Yeah, absolutely. We've always talked about this before. I could just sit on the beach the rest of my life and drink pina coladas and never need to worry about money ever again. And effectively, that's what I was trying to demonstrate. I just thought, I kind of thought it'd be funny to do it. Some people might not think it's funny, you see, because it's like, oh, that's terrible, all that wealth. It's like, hey, why not? If you've earned it and you've worked for it and you've sweated blood, sweat and tears for this, you deserve everything you get. You know, if you've got wealth because of it, then good luck and good on you.
The thing is, though, Jim, I mean, although you can do that, you could do that every day of the week, every day of the year if you liked. But I mean, you take a couple of weeks out, but you still work through them, and you work in your business all the time. So you don't really sit on the beach. Although you've been there a couple of weeks now on the shows, but I mean, that's.
I thought it was quite comical. It was on one of the landlord forums. This was a really good one for people, and I thought it's so childish. This guy. And they said something. The guy said that the initial person said, "Look, you know, I've been sent this letter. I hadn't lodged the deposit. I've returned the deposit in full back to the tenant because they moved out, but I forgot to lodge the deposit. Their solicitors now sent them a letter saying you're due us all the rent and 3 times the deposit back because that was never a valid tenancy." And the guy says, "What should I do?" And I went, and it says without prejudice at the top. And he says, "What should I do?" I went, "Ignore it." Ignore it because you're just giving the boy oxygen because they're ambulance chasers. They're just trying their best to actually get a response out of you so they can get money out of you. That's all they're trying to get. Because any court on this earth would probably sit and go, well, did you suffer financially because of it? No. It's resolved now, So it's resolved. So what's your problem? Why are you in court? And they wouldn't actually let it go to court anyway. You'd probably find when you sent the papers in, and it would be sent to the other party because that's what happens. Then the other party would have to respond, and then the court will look at it and go, but there's nothing really to answer for here. So why are we actually wasting the court's time with this? So unless the Fish Churchill Bureau takes a different opinion and says, look, because you haven't lodged it and you probably knew about it, then you have to pay 3 times the deposit or something like that. But you wouldn't say the tenancy was invalid and you've got to pay all the rent back. No. But this is what they were trying to do. And then I had people coming on saying, how irresponsible. And I thought, you've not been doing this for long, have you? No. Because it's like, I've been doing this for 30 years, if not more, as a financial controller as well, and an accountant in industry. And it's like, get these letters all the time from people. And it's really just it's a veiled threat. That's it. It's nothing. They're probably not going to take it to any of the next level, but they will take it to the next level if you respond to them. So you're better probably just to keep quiet in these instances. But somebody else went and said, this is ridiculous. And I don't know how he got to it. But eventually he tried to do, it's like top trumps. It's like, I've got more money than you. And it's like, is this really happening? And I just thought, I'm just gonna take this. I'm just gonna laugh at this. So every time he responded to something, I responded to something better. And then eventually he said, and I retired at 41. And I went, hey, I was 38.
38.
And then I never heard from him again. And I thought, how childish could anybody be? You ask for your comments, then people come on and castigate you and say, and then you go, but this is the reason why, and you still have people, and then it degrades into that. It's like, this is a lesson for everybody. You've got to you've just got to watch out for the naysayers. You've got to watch out for the negative people. They could be anybody. They could be anywhere. You might not even know them. This is the typical example. They eat up your time.
Yeah,
You've got to know
definitely.
when to leave it and just not respond to it and just park it where it is and just move on. It's the old thing I keep saying. I was always taught this wee analogy about in the desert. The caravan the dogs will bark, but the caravan will still roll on. And when they're in the desert. In other words, the camels will still keep walking and they'll still keep moving forward, even though the dogs are barking round about them. And that's kind of like what you've got to watch in your journey for success, is you will have the dogs barking every now and again,
Oh, yeah.
but you've just got to keep going. You just keep going and just ignore them. Don't get wrapped up in their world. They want you to get wrapped in their world. Just leave them, park them. I know it's difficult because I've been
I
there,
know.
and you can just see that response, what I got the now. And often as well, I say to people, God, are you actually, for the time that you've taken to come on here and say all these things, which aren't helpful at all, you could have utilised that time for
It's a
something
waste
more
of time.
important,
Yeah.
like spending with your family or anything like that. And I do say to some people, on channels, it's like, could you imagine you're lying on your deathbed and you think to yourself, I could have done with that hour back that
Spend spend
I
arguing with
wasted
somebody on social media.
arguing with that person over something that was completely irrelevant
Yeah.
and completely nonsensical, and a waste of time. So that's the type of things you've got to watch out for.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jim. And I think it's true that what you say there, the dogs will always bark and they will through anybody's journey. And I think it's how you teach yourself to ignore that and just move on and don't let it affect what you're doing. And it can be quite difficult. People sometimes have this need to respond to people that are negative, or like you say, even if it's like that lawyer's letter, like, I need to respond to it, but why? And so you need to, it's a train, it's a mindset thing as well. And you need to look at yourself and like, why do I need to respond to that? Or why do I need to give them my feedback or get involved in it? It's like, move on,
See,
use your time better.
see a top tip: if it's your channel they're responding on, and
Hmm.
it's completely negative, just ban and delete them.
Yeah.
It's like I've got when most of the time when people, very few times when they come onto our channels and they say things like that and they say things that are completely negative, and
Hmm.
then you look at their profile and they've got about 5 friends. That's about
Yeah.
it. And then you think to yourself, this guy's just trying to use your channel to get some attention. That's what
Hmm.
it's all about. And it's like, no, ban and delete. Just get rid of them. They're no worth it at all. Just remove them out of your life completely. Whereas a lot of people tolerate them. And it's like, I've got no tolerance for people like that.
No.
And I make it quite clear to them.
Yeah, definitely. So before we delve into today's topic, I just to touch on the deposit scheme thing, which that situation was about, just in case anybody's unclear. The penalty of the 3 months rent as a fine for not lodging your deposit is something that is done. But see, this will pursue you for the full amount of rent for the period and things. I mean, that's something that would only be in extenuating circumstances. But it is so important to lodge your deposit. So do it, guys, with a registered scheme.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
to be clear. But
Good
today,
advice.
Jim, we are going to cover save, spend, share, and invest, and looking at 4 different ways that you could use your money. And I think knowing how to manage your money today, and especially today in the crucial and evolving financial environment that we're in, to become financially independent is one of the one must recognise to be very prudent with their savings and how they spend money, and also seriously look at investing their money if they have
Yeah.
money. And each of these things are really essential to ensuring financial security, both now and in the future. And I think that's so important. The future, you've taught me that so much, Jim, and it makes me think so much about my financial future, not just now. And it's so important. I've not got kids, but a lot of people, obviously, whether you've got kids, you've got a family, you really need to think of them and how things are going to be in years to come.
Here's the one you've got to watch out for. Spend for today because you might die tomorrow. That's a
Yeah.
typical example about what people try. Now, good marketeers will do that.
Uh-huh.
That's a classic example is when you go to Craig Tara or Haven Holidays or Butlins or anything like that. They go, have a double, you deserve it. And that's a typical example of good, clever marketing. And
Yeah.
they're not bothered about your ill health later on in life. They just want to make more money. So with it, spend now because you could be dead tomorrow. I could get run by a bus. I could get run over by a bus tomorrow. Usually find people that say that are skint.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I mean, obviously, we're not saying don't do anything and don't enjoy yourself today, because you can, but you could still be very sensible about it and still look after what happens in your future as well. So,
You
but one thing I
can,
will
but
say,
the shittier life you have now, the better life you'll have later on.
yeah, and we spoke last week about boring pays well, and it really does. So yeah, so don't get too caught up in people that think they need to always be doing something and always need to be. Do you know what I mean? If you're settled just now and things are fine and you've got investments, let them compound up,
Yeah.
and you'll see the benefits later on. But before we cover obviously our topics today, the important thing is, and we always say it, we're not financial advisors. Always seek proper advice. Many people may think they've got a good handle on their current financial position, but the truth is, more often than not, their missed opportunities and details in their own situation. So a really seasoned financial institution or advisor or somebody that really knows what they're talking about can provide you with good insights into your actual needs and ensuring that every penny you have, you put to the best possible use of your growth. So speak to financial advisors, but
Yeah, I would say so.
obviously you're going to cover a lot of good topics today. And firstly, we're going to look at smart saving habits today, Jim.
Yep.
And I think to start with, before you embark on any journey and any investment, you're going to need some sort of money behind you, unless you're doing joint ventures or whatever. So a solid financial foundation is built on the creation of saving and looking at obviously emergency reserves and a reserve that can pay maybe around about 3 to 6 months worth of spending if you were to lose your
Yeah, I would
job
say
or
so.
something like that. Yeah. In order to protect you against unforeseen setbacks, like sudden unemployment and medical issues and things. You don't know what if they're going to come around or where that's going to happen. And budgeting nonetheless remains sound advice in addition to this as well. So
You'd be lucky if people had 6 minutes of financial money behind them. Never
yeah,
mind
a lot.
6 weeks
Yeah.
or 6 months. It's like, it's unbelievable. We're a society that almost spends everything we've got every single time. We're never
Mhm.
taught good financial budgeting skills at school. We're never taught about developing any saving habits at school. School is not designed to do that. It's just designed to give you the most basic education. And then based on the cards that you've been dealt, in other words, with the family and people round about you, that's really the cards that you've been dealt. That will determine how you get on
Yeah.
in your life as you grow up and how you're shaped and molded. So you want to get people round about you and get the right people round about you, because you're effectively the sum of the five people round about you right now.
Mhm.
And some
Yeah.
people will relate to that, and they'll maybe be stony broke right now, and they'll look at the five people round about them that are closest to them, and they'll all be stony broke as well.
Yeah.
And some people will be pretty well off, and they'll look at the five people round about them that they're connected to, that they are influencing more as much, and they'll be the same wealthy as well. So that's the sort of thing. And some people will be, probably broke at a different level. In other words, they've
Mhm.
got all the trappings, they've got all the trimmings, they've got their fantastic cars, they've got big houses, they've got glamorous holidays that they go on, but they're just broke at a different level. And the five people
Their
round about
outlays
them,
are
and they'll all
unreal.
be broke at a different level as well. The same ones, all their friends will be broke at a different level as well. And when they look at their net worth, in other words, their assets minus their liabilities, they've probably got nothing. And then
Mhm.
that's when everything's based on their ability to perform. That's why it's important to develop smart saving habits.
Yeah,
You need
definitely.
to do this to put a buffer in between where you are now and where you want to be, just in case emergencies, just in case something happens. It's also easy as well to dip into that every now and again. So put it so it's out of sight, out of mind. Automate that process.
Yes.
So in other words, just automatically every single month, money goes at your bank account. You don't even think about it going out, and it goes into another account which you never look at until about 6 months or a year. And you just look at it 6 months and yearly, because you know it's going to be the same amount every single time. Obviously, if it's going to go up and it's based on investment strategies and it's linked into an index or something like that, then you will probably want to look at it and track it.
Yeah.
But if it's just normal saving habits you're developing, maybe in an ISA or a high interest current account, or anything like that. And I'm promoting these because they're good short-term access for emergency
Hmm.
funds. If you've got something locked up, it's not exactly an emergency fund then, because if you're an emergency, you can't access it,
Yeah.
or there's huge penalties. So that's the sort of things you've got to do with an emergency fund. So, but believe it or not, 3 to 6 months is actually classified as financial freedom.
Really?
If you've got 3 to 6 months of your spending put aside. So in other words, you could stop work for 3 to 6 months and you will still survive quite easily.
Hmm.
That's is financial freedom. If you can do that for 2 years, you're classified as being rich.
Just got to say, if you could build on that, if people have got that, and if you could build on that, then you're on the road to a good, obviously, situation.
In my personal opinion, though, you've got to make sure it's not just a case you've got a savings fund. You have a regular income coming in,
Need
which isn't
something, yeah,
dependent on your ability to perform. So, in my opinion, the 3 to 6 months of money should be 3 to 6 months of money that don't rely on your input. The
yeah.
2 years, for rich is it doesn't rely on your input again, but it's not something that's going down in your funds. It's
Hmm.
actually something that's staying where it is. In other words, you're living off an income. For example, I'm gonna say it, property. You're
Yeah.
always getting income coming in out of it. You've always got something steady coming in. You leave it where it is because it's a savings fund at the end of the day. That's how I treat it anyway. And then you've got it when you really need it, or when you want to pull it out the bag and just go
Yeah.
on that, this one-off holiday you've always wanted to go on, or do this one-off mountain climb you've always wanted to do, or give to this one-off charity, this one-off payment you've always wanted to do. I mean, the one I'm doing here right now in Spain is for the cats,
Hmm.
release and neuter scheme, and we're not paying ongoing costs. That's the key here. We're paying the one-offs to catch,
Yeah.
neuter, and spay them and put them back into the community. And then they'll look after them on a day-to-day basis, like
Yeah.
drop off food for them, make sure they're all right. Because really, to be honest, in this area, nobody cares about cats.
No, I know.
I mean, yeah, and they don't care as much as we do in Britain. It's just Britain's quite a different situation where we have, cats are our pets and dogs and everything like that. They just don't do that around here. They're not
Yeah.
as they're not as they're not as fanatical about it as we are.
Yeah. I was going to say compassionate. Compassionate's probably not the right word, but yeah, fanatical's probably, yeah,
They
that's
probably
the right.
just not as compassionate either. They'll
Well,
let their horses stand out in the middle of the field and tie them at the thing with no
in
shelter
the heat. Yeah.
for a whole day in the blistering heat. And I'm thinking, that's not what Jacob Dridge told me.
Yeah.
Jacob Dridge is an animal sanctuary out in Spain as well, who I know.
Hmm.
That's Julian and Rachel. So Julian and Rachel run it, and they told me it's like they've always got to have to make sure that the
Some
horses
sort
can
of
get under
shelter.
shelter when they want to.
Yeah.
So they can decide whether they want to be sheltered because they're too hot. But no, they don't do that here. But then that's why they've got
Especially,
quite a lot of horses, because they take them off them.
especially when temperatures out there have been pushing 40 and everything this year. So,
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
yeah.
Absolutely crazy. So it does come back to things like, what are you going to use these savings for? Definitely at this point in time, it's going to be an emergency fund. If you're
Yeah.
suddenly unemployed, medical issues is a classic example as well. Look how I used
Yeah,
it.
definitely.
It was when my knee was having problems, rather than actually have to wait on the NHS, which to take about 2 years. I then just was referred to Professor Mackay over in Glasgow from Stuart Barton,
Hmm.
and I was in the clinic, and I had my knee done within a couple of weeks. Job done, out, rehabilitated over the next 6 months, and that was me back to running again.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
suppose
that's what the money's for, Richard. This is what I need to tell people. The
yeah.
emergency fund is there for the things you need. This is what people go, oh, money's the root of all evil. No, money's not the root of all evil. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. The love of money, that I mean, but the money isn't itself. The money is a tool to do good for either yourself, your extended family, or your community, or someone else that you don't even know and you want
Mhm.
to give to. That's the key here. I spoke to an agent actually, Trisha, and she's down in Trisha might actually be watching. She's down in Cornwall, I think it is. Yeah, she does. She books all the comedians
Yeah.
for the events, or is it Somerset, Cornwall or Somerset, or somewhere around about there. Anyway, she was saying to me, and I said to her about, do you want to develop this a bit more? And she just sat next to us at the festival. You want to develop this more and all the rest of it? She went, well, I'm not really that. I'm not motivated by the money. I went, but can you develop it more to make more money? She went, yeah, I probably could. I went, well, why do you not just develop it more, make more money, and give it to the people that need it?
Give back. Yeah.
Oh, I never thought about that. And then one thing led to another, and then she was talking about a comedian she was going to book, but she'd never got a chance to see him. But I had just met him. That was Mark Nelson, and Mark and I had a discussion. And then Mark actually just walked right past at that time, and I went, "Oh, let's introduce you to Mark." Mark. So I shouted Mark over, and they introduced to each other, and probably a deal's been done there where he's going to get booked. And then I went on and did a post about something else. She went, "Oh God, that resonates with what you said exactly." She says, "I now know what you were meaning out of that," and that's what it is. So if you could make it, you've probably got a responsibility to make as much money as you can. Then, if that's the case, and if you don't want it, give it to the people that need it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like your example you said about Tony, your daughter Tony does with Jacob's Ridge, because she wanted to go back there and volunteer, and they're like, to be fair, we've got numerous volunteers we could get anytime.
Yeah.
And you've got a skill. If you could make money, we would rather you donated money for us to help, and that's what she does.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we're going to talk about sharing as well as we go on. But yeah, just to finish up on savings. So I split it down into three things here, and a saving for emergencies, which includes the cost of medical or anything like that. I mean, that's so important. I did say obviously in here it says pay yourself first. Now I don't mean pay yourself so you could go out and live some lavish life. It's basically save or invest your money first before you get to the end of the month or the end of whatever you've got coming in, and then set aside what you've got left over. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Save or invest money first, then use what's left.
That's a different mindset between the person that's wealthy and the person that's not so wealthy. As soon as they get their money, they both get the same amount of money, and I'll guarantee you, one of them goes, "What can I spend it on?
Yeah.
What have I got left to save?" And the other one, who's usually the wealthiest, will go, "What do I need to invest in? What have I got left to spend?"
Yes.
That's the only difference. That makes a fundamental difference. And if you can get that right, and you can discipline yourself to do that, you will automatically be successful and wealthy as a result.
It is a discipline thing, and if you could discipline yourself to do it, then you're on a good path. And then also creating a good spending plan, which is also known as budgeting and things, and list your monthly income and expenses and things, and actually look at that and break it down. And we've done previous shows on that, and you'll find them in the playlist. And that brings us on nicely to having mindful spending habits as well, and making the distinction between requirements and what in a consumerist society that we are, it's hard yet more crucial to do than ever. It's so hard just now because you've got in your hand on your phone, you've got so many things, ads and things prompting you. So you really need to take yourself away from that and discipline yourself not to get rolled into things like that, because all they want you to do is spend your money. So think twice about spending your money on maybe like the newest fashion accessories and technology and you know, all these things that are pushed in front of us, and prioritize your spending to the more important things that will, in the long run, it will become easier in the long run once you start to do that. And I think also a well-planned budget might suffer from these impulsive purchases and things. If you continually do compulsive purchases, then there's all very well creating a budget, but then if you're just going to spend it on impulse purchases, then it really doesn't hold any value if you're not going to stick to that budget and be really disciplined to do that.
You have to. Here's a great phrase: if you don't discipline yourself, someone else will discipline you.
Yeah.
Whether that's a bank manager, whether that's a boss, whether that's your mum and dad, whether that's your partner, whether that's your kids, even depending on what age you are. If you don't discipline yourself, someone else will do it for you. So you're better to have the choice of doing it for yourself, for you, and actually being mindful about that in the whole process. You know, that's what I've always been taught, and that's what I was taught by my mentors as well. And I've kind of stuck with that, and it's worked so far. So if it works for me, it might work for other people as well.
Yeah, definitely. Spend less and save more. And obviously saving often starts with, I mean, more than likely spending less money. Whether it's obviously on silly things like hair. I mean, a lot of people play for hair salons and new gadgets and like the premium coffee brands and things were covered before. Um, that obviously myself is quite guilty of doing. And just things, just a lot of things, clothing brands and things. People get so wrapped up into this, and they cost an absolute fortune now.
Yeah.
And it's not necessary. It really isn't. And if you're really serious about,
here's a good one for you. I can't find another £1,000 a year to save. Okay, do you have coffee every day at Costa or Starbucks? Much
yeah,
as that? Oh, it's about £5. So that's 5 days a week. Yeah, it's what about the weekends? Oh, I sometimes pop in there the weekend. So you're talking about what? Maybe about 40 quid a week on coffee? 40
I
quid a
know.
week times how many weeks are 50? So 4,400, 5 times that, there's 2 grand. Can you know save half of that?
Yeah,
Look at that. There's 2 grand there straight away on coffee. Costas and Starbucks are rubbing their hands because that's the type of cost they charge. But the reality is, the money's there if you want it. You just have to, again, come back to saying, discipline yourself to look at what you're spending your money on. I mean, we didn't talk about it much in the expenses and that in the previous bit, where we skimmed over that just a wee bit. But, you have to make sure you realise what you're spending your money on. So you have to know where you are to know where you want to go. Put it that way. That's a really good way. You have to know where you are right now, and you have to be brutally honest with yourself to know what you need to do to get to where you need to go. And there's a classic example about how to save money straight away. If you spend money every day on expensive brands like Costa and Starbucks, and just throw away stuff. Oh, have a smoothie every day at the shop. Just have it at home. Take it to work with you. Get a instant coffee. It's like, oh, but it's no the same. All right, okay. Well, that's fine. You could waste 2 grand every single year for the next 10 years. That's £20,000. Sorry, what? 20 grand. 20 grand over the next 10 years on coffee. You're having a laugh.
yeah.
When you put it in that context, that's crazy, eh? I'll drink anything.
Definitely save and create good spending habits. It's probably about taking all your income and your expenses, getting one clear picture, and then helping decide where you could really save and trim that down. And obviously, there's some debts that people have that you're not going to be that are unavoidable, like your mortgage for interest, for instance, and high interest debts like credit cards and personal loans and everything. They are not, and they could quickly spiral and really have you in a situation. So look at them first and try and get rid of them.
Start attacking the credit cards because they've got the highest.
Yeah,
Definitely. Even though you can, I can move it to an interest free. Fine, move it to an interest free, but still pay it down. And get it down as quick as possible, because that interest free might disappear at some point in time in the future, and now you're stuck with and you can't get rid of it. So these are the type of things you need to get rid of and start to trim. But I'll go back to the coffee example again. Take the baby steps. You don't need to say, I'm going to cut it out completely. I tell you what, that would be some discipline to do that. But once a week I'll get Starbucks once a week on a Monday. So Ian and I will go for a walk. So we get a coffee somewhere else. We get something at Starbucks, and that's only once a week. So I'm okay with that because it's once a week. But if I was doing it every day, it's like, do I really need to do that every day? It's a huge expense.
Yeah.
And folk go, but you've got loads of money. I'm not caring.
That doesn't matter. I
could give that. Well, that's the point. I could give that to somebody that needs it, possibly. Yeah. There's somebody that now it said something about their vet bills and all the rest of it, and how it's put them in a difficult situation. And it's like, so I'm going to see them when I go back, and I'll have a wee chat with them about it. But it might help them out.
Yeah. Yeah, as about baby steps, like you say, Jim, and I mean, you said obviously you used an example there of £1,000. How could I get an extra £1,000? But I mean, people might think, God, there really isn't any, and maybe there isn't in their budget. But even if you could look at let's look at £100, just something that
I could find something somewhere.
Yeah.
You could always find something. It just takes. You didn't want to admit it to yourself at the fact that it's that extra thing you always get. It's maybe something that you one-offs, and you keep thinking, oh, I deserve it, I have to have it, and it makes me feel good. If it makes you feel good, you've got to really think about what's happening there.
Well,
if you're buying stuff to make you feel good, you've got to think about the underlying cause about why you're needing to buy it to make you feel good. That's the problem you need to solve, not the fact that you're spending. You solve that problem, and everything else will
You'll
fall
stop
into
spending
place.
on it.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then that's when you start entering the realms of spending money on all these things and then living out with your means. And it's really crucial not to live out with your means. And if you are unable to save money for and don't have money for major purchases and long-term investment, then you may very well be living out with your means.
Do you know the amount of people that'll probably listen to this or watch this and say, "Oh, I'm not living without my means," and it's like, and they probably are.
Yeah.
They probably just don't realise it. Probably just, and it's because again coming back to it's the people round about you. It's the people round about you are exactly the same as you. Therefore, you don't notice actually that is out with your means. It's only when it gets to a crisis point that anything happens. And again, coming back to ability to perform, or you're needing money because there's a one-off cost that you're having to cover. It's an emergency situation. You don't have that. That's kind of you've been living beyond your means if you can't do things like that. Definitely. So you've got to make sure that you're exactly right. You need to put money aside for these one-off major purchases. You need to put one off aside for long-term investment. You need to live within your means, not out above your means. And don't try to keep up with the Joneses. I know somebody that actually remortgages their house on a regular basis to actually keep up with the Joneses. A classic example. That they have to have the best because the friend that they go about with has the best as well. But the friend that they go about with actually earns a bloody fortune.
Yeah.
And he invests wisely and he saves wisely, and he knows that because he spoke to me one time and I gave him a bit of advice, and he says, "Do you know that advice you gave me right now is worth more than any of the advice my financial advisor's ever given me, and he charges me £3,500 a year."
Right,
And he
believe it.
says he's never even given me anything close to what you just gave me in the last half an hour.
Yeah. It just
But
shows you, though. I mean, that's obviously from experience, not obviously from a financial advisor point of view. But then that's obviously what you enter in the realms of from the experience of what you've went your journey, Jim.
well, the difficult and the problem about financial advisors, they can only advise you within the means of the law.
Yes.
But the great thing is, if you're a friend of someone, so this is your friend. So if I'm friends with someone, I could easily advise them, and there's no within the means of the law because they're my friend, and that's what takes into account within the legal system itself. If you're because it's a classic example of if everybody who gave any advice which deemed to be financial was standing at the bar, would all be in jail. Would all be in court because everybody at some point in time is probably given some sort of typical financial advice while they're having a pint at the bar with their pal. And that's why the Financial Services Act actually took that into account and thought, well, you can't exactly go to your mate when you were talking when you were both drunk and say, you gave me poor financial advice, I'm going to prosecute you. No, you can't.
No.
So everybody's got an opinion. Everybody gives you financial advice, but there is times where it is okay to do that in certain circumstances. And this because I've known this person for years and years and years. There was nothing wrong with doing that because it's just two friends talking to each other about what they were doing and what their strategies were. And then that's when he came up with that and said, "God, what you've told me in the last half an hour has been worth more than what I've paid my financial advisor at £3,500 a year."
Yeah, but I mean, we always do stress speak to somebody who's an actual financial advisor. They do have a grasp on the law surrounding that. But I think in the circumstances you're talking about, Jim, obviously from your experiences and things, then it's more than likely the advice you're giving is going to be quite good. But obviously, you still
we don't know a person's full circumstances. That's the thing. And when I go into a lot of forums as well, people say, "I've got a house. It's got I'm buying it. I've bought it for X, selling it for Y. Will I pay capital gains? And is there anything I could do?" And I'm like, "Well, speak to a good accountant for one thing. That's what I would say. But there is a couple of things that I'll tell you, and it's if you've got a spouse, you can use their capital gains allowance as well under love, favour, and affection, and transfer the right amount. If you're both, make sure you both use your basic rate tax as well thresholds. when you sell it as well, to take advantage of it.
12.5.
Minimum possible, yeah, exactly. And if you stayed in it for a period of time, then you've got advantages as well, which if you speak to an accountant, he'll be able to tell you if you've got exemptions for the period of time that you stayed in it, for the capital gain as well. Apart from that, I really can't tell you anything else except speak to a really good accountant, financial advisor, and a lawyer as well. They'll be key in this instrumental about transferring it from you to the other to your spouse under the love, favour and affection rules, which is capital gains free. For the proportion of the property, and you could just choose what proportion you want to transfer. So you can just say, well, 10% will work to make them, come to the right amount, or just transfer that amount. So he's only got that £6,000 gain because he's a high rate taxpayer, but he used his personal allowance or her personal allowance. So that's classic examples about how you could give people a bit of advice, but really just saying, top it off that, to be honest, you've got to ask your accountant about what I've just said. I don't know the rest of your circumstances, and it might not work for you, and it might not be applicable to you, or it might work for you, but you're better to get the best advice from the right person so they've got a full picture of what you're doing. So that's when it comes down to make sure you tell the person you're dealing with and don't hold back what your full circumstances are so they can advise you, especially when you're speaking to a financial advisor.
Yeah, definitely always do that. So if somebody's in the position where they've got their spending habits under control, they've got themselves back on a good position, they're saving money, they've got money in the bank, then really you need to be looking at investing and then what investment strategies you could adopt. And it really is best to start investing as soon as possible, as soon as you can, in order to get the best run at setting yourself up financially for the future. Compound interest wonders allow even little sums of growth significantly over time when invested early enough. And that's the important thing. And it's never a good idea to put all your eggs in one basket, as the expression goes. So look at what options you have for investing. Obviously, we always refer to property we deal in, but there is other avenues and things. And it is important, like I say, not to put all your eggs in one basket and look at maybe investment diversification, because it is essential, because it enables people to disperse the risk while benefiting from maybe different market trends and things as well. But it's also crucial to keep in mind that investing isn't something you do once and then just forget about it. It's something that you continue, and we'll use property as an example, and how that compounds up and how you build that up for one property to your second property, and then how it goes on to there, and how it escalates over the years. And that's how if you're building a property portfolio, it will compound up over the years. And by the time you're 10, 20 years down the line, you're going to be in a good financial position.
I would say so. I mean, it's the easiest form of doing anything, and it's the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest.
Yeah.
And I still don't think a lot of people realise the leveraged position to put themselves in by compounding wealth over a long period of time. And Warren Buffett talks about every single time. I mean, up to 60-year-old, he's made more money after 60, than he made in his first 60 years. And it's just out of compounding. So, and that's all he's ever done. He says it's nothing. It's no rocket science. He says I've just built my wealth by compounding over time and investing in businesses and compounding over that as well. And just growing all these businesses and having loads of irons in the fire.
Yeah.
But making sure you've got people in the right position who could actually run that business rather than you actually having an input into it. Yeah. That's probably the most important thing. So I've talked about this before. That's how billionaires end up getting their wealth, is because they buy into businesses or they build businesses which are not reliant on them, and they let them grow as a result. Whereas millionaires are just they do a one-track thing like what I'm doing, which is property investment.
Yeah.
And kind of that's about it. They'll never get to anything bigger than that because that's what they're doing. Now, I'll be honest, for most people, millionaire would be glorious, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. It's like flipping heck, being a millionaire. It's like you've got $1 million net worth. Now, that's not a millionaire. It's like, oh, I'm a property millionaire. Okay, so how much property you got? Oh, I've got 6 million. So how much debt have you got? Oh, I've got 6 million. Okay, you're not a millionaire then.
No.
You've got zero. Your net worth, you're at stand start. However, if you service the debt on the property, in other words, the debt it's the 6 million's paying over the next 20 years, and it doubles in value, then you've made 6 million
Yeah.
instantly, and you've serviced the debt. That's all you're doing. So that's how most people do that. That's how most people create wealth. And that's how most businesses create wealth as well. They borrow against for the bank for capital improvements and capital investment, and then they get tax deductions, tax incentives for doing it as well. So again, speak to a good accountant if you know about that. If you're running a business and you're buying capital equipment, because you will get allowances, and you sometimes get 100% allowances in the first year for that, and that compounds over wealth, and the capital, the investment you're making actually makes a really good return on investment, because you're buying a machine that produces X amount of widgets every year and makes X amount of profit out of that machine. So therefore, that return on that machine was probably worth it. Now, I always talked about when I was in industry, the benchmark was 2-year payback. So in other words, they wanted to make sure before they spent money on any capital, they were going to get a 2-year payback at least. At the very least, they're going to get a 2-year payback on any investment they spent money on. And what the 2-year payback was if it was 200,000, they were going to make 200,000 over the next 2 years out of buying that bit of equipment. So that's the kind of benchmark they had. And then if it went beyond that, then they would take a decision based on, is it a long-term capital decision, or is it a short-term 2-year project that we're just looking for? Because then that bit of equipment will go on for years and years and years, and then that's when you'll start making your money after the 2 years, because the payback is the 2 years is paid off the equipment, but effectively you've got your money back, and then after that you're making quids in. Exactly how property works. Everybody thinks property makes money from day one. Oh, I'm making money for day one. It's like, no, you're not. You've spent an absolute fortune. You've got money in there already, and it's called a deposit. You put a deposit in. So what is your return on your deposit? That's what you have to work out. And that's why we talk about the net return is the most important thing, or the gross, or the net gross return, which is another one. Not the gross return. The gross yield is only important if you're buying for cash with property. If you're not buying for cash, it's the net gross yield you're looking at. So in other words, it's the rent minus the interest. That's the net gross amount, and then divide that by the money you've got in. That'll give you your true. That'll give you your true yield on investment. But ideally, you really want your yield to be the net one at the bottom, with all your overheads taken off as well, and then that's your benchmark.
Yeah, and then you use that example of this guy that, like you say, had his portfolio, and he had £6 million worth of portfolio, but then he was in debt of 6 million. So then really he should have been, that's when it falls into maybe doing an evaluation or regular evaluations of your portfolio and make sure that they are performing as well as they can, and that they reflect the financial changing objectives of the economy and the environment and the property market and things in that instance.
You'd be surprised at how many people don't know what's going on. Again, I made a comment the other day about, I'm subsidising 2/3 of my tenants. They're actually making more money than me in terms of what they're taking home. Now, obviously, my wealth's a lot greater, but they're making more money. So I'm effectively subsidising them for that because of the rent freezes. So then the person says, well, why do you just put the rents up? I'm like, oh, okay, obviously you don't know. Obviously you have no idea what's going on. Honestly, but that's what I mean. That's how disconnected some people are about what's going on in the world, and they could be caught. They could be caught because of that, because they think it's just a case that, well, you can put your rents up anytime. So that's the type of person that runs in and buys another property and actually doesn't look at the numbers and just assumes that they can put their rent up anytime they want, to any figure they want. And then they get caught out, and I've responded back to them. They've not responded back to me yet. I says, okay, but you can only put up 3% in Scotland, or 12%, or 12%, but 6%, between 3 and 6%. But you have to get 6%, you have to have 12% in costs increased over the last 6 months.
Financial hardship up to 12%.
Over. So you can get up to 6%, but you have to have 12% increase in costs over the last 6 months to get that 6%. So when everybody thinks it's just a 6% increase, you've got a 6% increase in your costs. It's no. they'll only get 3% then if that's the case.
Yeah.
So it's the naivety of some people actually not understanding the remit, what's going on right now in terms of property investment, but also in terms of any investment. Because the
Yeah.
government changes it all the time. When they started taxing dividends on pension, on pension, the pension and stuff like that. They started taxing the dividends on them years and years ago. Everybody was up in arms because it's like, what? Because pensions, I believe, used to get the dividend paid straight in, and there was no tax on them. And then the government went, here's a wee thing that we could actually start taxing it. We could start taxing the dividends to the pension funds, because they were getting away with it scot-free.
Yeah.
I've no idea where that name Scot Free comes from. there must have been a Scot somewhere that got everything for free, and that's why the
And it
phrase
kind of
Scot
stuck.
Free comes up.
But yeah, whether it's
I'll have to look it up unless somebody's got an answer to that, where Scot Free comes from.
yeah, that would be good to know if anybody knows the answer to that. But I mean, I think, like you say, Jim, it's not just in the property market. If you've got investments in or you're doing shares or any avenue, it's really critical to keep up with market trends, and that's obviously over a different variety of investment possibilities. And really, the global economic data and the economic environment around you, people are just so unaware of what's going on. And that is really important to have a successful investment, whether that's in
Well, there's examples tonight, but everybody thinks, there's people out there still convinced that the property market's going to crash. No, there's no indicators at this point in time. Now I've actually heard, I was hearing the other day, they were actually saying that the government thinks we're on track to have inflation by the end of the year. So, okay, so we're only going to go down by a couple of percentage points before the end of the year then, if that's the case, because that's where they were wanting to go in the first place.
Yeah.
So that possibly means like base rates might not actually be increased next month or this month.
Yeah.
So that's maybe a good signal that base rates might not be increased, therefore mortgages will stabilise, therefore housing market's still stable. Job done.
Sorry, I was trying to look at Scot Free and see if I could get the answer for you, just out of curiosity.
It's all right. Well, I'm sure somebody will tell us what Scot Free is. Okay, it's regular evaluations, as you said, Richard. It's the portfolio, the change in financial objectives, what you really want to do. Actually, how you're going to plan it for if you've got a big portfolio of anything. Is it going to be subject to inheritance tax? That's another thing I'm reading up now. And are you going to mitigate that because there's rules and regulations in place where you just can't give it away on your deathbed? It actually gets pulled back in for chargeable rates. So all your tax burden is completely wiped out when you die, but your estate comes under inheritance tax. So that's another one. And there used to be clever planning mechanisms where people just got married there and then. That was one actually, where people did get married. They'd been partners for life, and they'd never been married. And literally, one of them was like, "I'm terminally ill. I'm going to be dying tomorrow," and they were getting married that day.
Yeah.
Because everything transfers to your spouse, tax free. No inheritance tax on it at all. It all transfers completely to your spouse. And that's why some people were getting married literally on their deathbed. And it still happens today. That's one of the ways to do it. However, all you're doing is kicking the can down the road to the next person and thinking, how are they going to get, how are they going to avoid it as well? How are they going to, well, let's only avoid it, just say how are they going to plan for it efficiently, tax efficiently.
Yeah.
So that's the difficulty as well. So you've got to make sure you just keep one eye down the road about where it's going to go and what your plans are for the future, and what you want to try and achieve. So as well as short term, medium term, you need to plan long term as well. Now, who would have known when we bought all our properties in the very beginning in our own names? It was very tax advantageous to buy it now on your own names. Who would have known that the government would bring in Section 24? You would never have known that. Now, I was quite fortunate that as soon as Section 24 was brought in, I started to transfer chunks of our portfolio in our name and take advantage of our capital gains allowances, and sometimes transfer 6 at a time and combine it with purchases from off market and on market, and get 6 at a time as well to avoid ADS. But you still got capital gains, so I was still paying pretty hefty capital gains bills, but I was minimising them as much as possible. In that fairly, but I've still got quite a few properties in our names, and they're still subject to Section 24. But who would have known that? And if I'd known that at the very beginning, I would never have limit. I would always had limited companies.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of things you've got to be careful of, and you've got to just plan for the future and watch out. Now, I kind of
Plan for the unexpected as well, I think.
yeah,
Really.
we kind of knew this was coming, didn't we? We knew the capital gains allowances were going to get taken away, and we knew they were going to get taken away because we did a show back in 2018, 2019, where the budget of responsibility said that there's about 18 billion to be made in reforming the capital gains tax system
So it was obvious it was
to the government. So it was obvious that the government were going to do this at some point in time and raid the coffers of the personal allowances of people getting capital gains.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, a lot of people might not be so in the know, so it is good to kind of try and make a point of keeping yourself up to date with what's going on, because it could save you a lot further down the line. So yeah, so saving, spending habits, and obviously investing. And then you spoke earlier in the show, Jim, about this lady down south who is now obviously doing what she's doing to give the extra money back, and that brings me on to sharing. And sharing or donating money as a way to obviously use money that helps other people or helps someone else. And you could choose to share your money with maybe organisations or help raise money for specific causes and things. Jim, you do a lot of that as well. And like you've just explained earlier, you've made people realise the benefit of doing that as well. If they've got enough money and they don't want to do something because they don't need the extra money, use the extra money to benefit somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's also important having that discussion maybe with your children and things as well about how you make decisions about what organisations and things to support, and it can help them understand the process of ultimately giving back and what the benefits of that are.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It takes time. I suppose it takes time to develop a habit of sharing money. It's not a thing that comes naturally for us because as human beings we're taught to be, I think, we're taught to be a bit selfish, to be honest, in terms of look after. You know, some people and the people around about you say, "Oh, look after number one, look after number one." But how? I use a classic example. Every single person in Britain is probably in the top wealthiest 1%. Did you know that?
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Every single person in Britain has a salary and has a job is the top wealthiest 1% in the world.
And people will be surprised to hear that.
Yeah, and that just puts into perspective. It's like, you know, we sit here and think to ourselves, oh, we're hard done by, we've no got much and all the rest of it. Yeah, woe is me. And yet, compared to the rest of the world, most of the people in the United Kingdom are actually earning, just have any salary, even minimum wage, are actually the top 1% in the world of wealth.
Of course, because there's people in the world who don't even have the basics of sanitation, food, shelter, things that we all just expect, and that's part of normal life to have.
And that's where it comes back to say that it's like, you know, help. And you know, the other thing I see now and again is people say, "Oh, we'll help people in their own country." Does it really make a difference?
Yeah, no.
I'm not really sure where that how that mindset applies. It's like we'll just help you because you're in our country or you're in our doorstep or you're in a local community. But if somebody else had the same problem in a different country, we wouldn't give a toss about it.
Yeah.
There's another boy, you know, was on about the RNLI the other day. Oh, I'm never going to support the RNLI again because it saved these people, these immigrants from drowning in their boats.
Really?
And I'm like, so what are you proposing? Just let them die? And he went, yes. I went, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
and I actually said it and left it as a remark. And I thought, I'm just going to leave that there. Because it's like, this is mental. It's like, okay, we'll just let them die there. That's fine. That's just crazy, eh? But that's how some people are.
It is, unfortunately, and some people do have that kind of mindset.
But do you know why they're like that? It's because their life is shit. And they just need to take it out on somebody else. That's really what it comes down to. My life is so shitty, I've got to go and kick somebody else, or I've got to let somebody else suffer more than me. That type of person.
Yeah,
I often think we should just exchange them for these people. just send them over to where they came from and let the people who came from there into our country. And it's like, I tell you what, we'll just swap places with you with that person then.
I know it is crazy. I mean, we're all human beings, and I think if somebody is in a position financially where they are very comfortable and can still earn more money, then you really need to think about sharing that with other people and thinking of the benefit it would have to other people, and not just people close to you. Do you know what I mean? Organisations and other people throughout the world. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is ways and means
I
to
mean,
do that.
well, let's be honest. Shared money and helping other people is, and I will say it is a bit of a selfish motive because it's the buzz and the feeling you
Because you
get
get
out
that
of it.
gratification from
Yeah,
helping
of
someone. Yeah,
course
of
you
course.
do. It just warms your heart and
Yeah,
strengthens your decision-making skills and things. And it just makes you feel a whole lot better about yourself. You just feel really good at the fact that you're doing
yeah,
it. So it's fantastic, but you could look at it that way as well. But I would never want anybody to think that that's why they're doing it. If that's why you're doing it, then again you've got to look at yourself and think, what deep down, what is it the thing that you're needing to sort out in your life that makes you want to do that in order to feel like that? Again, that you've got to be pretty self-critical about yourself. You've got to be
yeah.
pretty self diagnostic about yourself as well. I think that's an important thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's really important. You need to do that. But so, I mean, just to kind of recap on what we've covered today, and I think despite maybe appearing simple, the areas like saving and spending and sharing and investing, they really call for a combination of your own self-control. You need to have an ongoing education, and occasionally you really need to seek professional advice, and we've stressed
Yeah,
that a lot throughout today. But the secret is proactive engagement, regardless of where you are in your financial journey. You put yourself on the road to a more secure and wealthy future by carefully adhering to principles of these financial pillars that we covered today. And I think that's um, really where I want to bring it to an end today, because I think that what we've covered today are really the financial pillars to follow. You just really need to have that own self-control and determination to actually follow them and discipline yourself to do it.
absolutely. As I said when I did that with the Pina Colada post, I said at the end
Yeah,
of the day, anybody can do this.
yeah,
Anybody can do this. Anybody can follow the same pattern. Anybody can follow the same path. It's probably more improved now, and probably tarmacked it and super highwayed it. But
not,
anybody could
not too
follow
much
that
bumps along
path.
the way.
Yeah, I mean, there were no potholes in it and everything now. Kind of like I had to deal with and going off track and going on the dirt roads and rocky roads and stuff like
Yeah,
that in terms of my path that I had to follow. It's like a super highway blueprint is in place now in order to do this. And most people are actually trying to copy that and follow that process. And some of these fake gurus out there are trying to sell it, obviously, as a
yeah,
course, and then trying to proceed to say that they've built all their money in property and their wealth in property. And it's like, no, you've no. You've built your money in selling courses. You've not built your money and you've not built your wealth in actually property. You've built in selling courses and then invested in property. That's a different aspect. I've worked for mine and then invested in property. I didn't sell courses on property to do it. I think that's the most important thing to understand about that. And
yeah,
that means that anybody can do that then, because their model is based on the fact that you teach other people and that's how you make money to invest it. Whereas my model's like, you work a normal job, you work hard on it, you invest, you spend, you save, you then have money to spend as well anytime you want. But you choose exactly what level of wealth you want out of it based on your goals and aspirations for the future. That's all it comes down to. That's all I could say about that.
yeah. No, that a lot of good points there, Jim, and I think it is really that is really how it is. And if anybody that has watched today wants to obviously speak about any of the topics that we've covered any further, then you could reach out to me. Also, if somebody is seeking professional advice and maybe they need pointed in the right direction of a financial advisor or anything, please come to me direct, and I will happily obviously point you in the right direction of several good professional financial advisors that we work with
Yeah.
and
Just a
recommend.
just a quick proviso. You got a lot of investors approaching you starting out saying go and source a property, buy a property for me,
Yeah,
and actually tell me where to put my money. And I get a
yeah,
lot of people actually saying, just take my money, Jim, and invest it. And it's like, no,
yeah,
I don't want to do that. It's like we'll certainly I'll send you to Richard. Richard will find you the right properties. You can buy them all in your own name, so all your wealth is your own, all your income's your own as well. It's no, I'm not taking anything out of it at all,
yeah,
and you're making all the money for yourself. that's the most important thing. We get you started on that, and that's a really good tack to do, rather than actually taking somebody's money and then charging them fees every single year or just managing a fund.
Yeah. Yeah, when people come to me, the first point of call is obviously we have a chat about their situation, and it's then I point them, right, okay, you need mortgage advice or speak to the right person, you need this, and then we get them set up, and then we get to that point where, right, let's look at your journey and how you want where you want your money to go and where it should go best in terms of what type of property and things. So,
Well, I sent you some properties today, and I thought, wow, these are pretty good
yeah,
price
I've
points
already
for these
seen it.
properties. It's like,
Yeah,
wow,
I've already
these are
seen
pretty
it.
good price points, and it's like you'd be probably referring people to them, saying you should look at that one because that's a good buy.
Yeah, definitely. So
That's us then.
yeah, that's us, Jim. That was good. Thanks for all your insights. It's good to obviously cover points like that for somebody that's been through the journey and still on it, like yourself. So I hope that has been really informative for everybody watching. We'll be back again next Monday, obviously at 12:30 as usual. And until then, I will see you all later, and I'll catch you later, Jim.